Last week, we saw the rise of a leader and the fall of a titan. I think you know which is which. With one team principal, you're getting petulant, beleaguered remarks, defeated language, and now over-the-top reactions to perfectly reasonable questions. And with the other, you're getting a person who is willing to fight their team's corner and get something out of a particularly freak occurrence. At the start of the season, Fred Vasseur, to me, looked like a very bizarre choice for the new team principal at Ferrari after the dismissal of Mattia Binotto, and many other team principals, because Ferrari, they were just going through them like crazy. It felt like football. Why would Ferrari resort to somebody like him, who had been leading Alfa Romeo, and they weren't really doing all that great up until 2022, when it started off great and then just petered out into nothingness, where they still reside today. In those first few months, things looked very precarious for Fred, going so far as the CEO of Ferrari not liking the fact that he and Toto were going to the Bahrain Grand Prix in the same jet. What? They can't be friends or something? They're that tense at the moment? It was getting quite clear that Ferrari were not willing to wait for results, and they were expecting Fred Vasseur to be fast from the get-go, and that did not happen. There were constant rumblings about Fred Vasseur being isolated and being ignored by the executive board of Ferrari, that the team were not liking him, that he was one race away from being sacked for not being effective enough. But thankfully, those rumours have now since died down, and nobody's talking about Fred Vasseur being fired anymore. And if you wanted to put a little cynical spin on things, you could say that Fred Vasseur was only hired to keep Charles Leclerc sweet, because he and Charles have a very close relationship during Charles Leclerc's years of experience in the junior categories, that he was brought in to go, "Hey, don't worry, Charles, it's okay. We got one of your favourites. You like Fred? Oh, he's good. Just please stay, Charles." Meanwhile, whilst one team principal was facing internal resistance and struggles seemingly, the other team principal was starting to look more and more haggard as well as frustrated with their lot. Toto was effectively going through the entire season, "Oh, where is the win button? We are supposed to win. We are Mercedes. We are supposed to win. Where is the win button?" After years of constant dominance, the 2022 F1 regulations were not kind to Mercedes or Toto. They were not going to be on their Christmas card list. They simply got it wrong, and the team were adamant that it was the right way to go for the longest time, their car design, only pivoting in Monaco with the new side pods bolted onto the Franken car. Throughout all of this, the imperious persona that Toto had been cultivating over the last few years since he joined in 2013 was starting to crumble, and maybe not look so solid after all. Danica Patrick's comments about him during Vegas were actually quite on point. Toto does look defeated, frustrated, and possibly tired. Fair play to that comment, she's right. Toto Wolff has not been in this position before, where the team that he is managing is not winning. In fact, they're very lucky to even get podiums, or even a decent amount of points through one thing or another. It's becoming obvious that Toto is not handling the pressure all that well, because he's been used to winning. When he joined in 2013, you could argue, well, Mercedes weren't winning back then, but it was very clear that that team was on the up. From 2012, when they got their first win in their modern era, 2013 was looking better and better and better. They'd just signed Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton managed to win in his opening season with Mercedes. Mercedes were gaining more and more points, results, and podiums, and it was looking really positive. And also, they knew what they had under the hood. That 2014 Mercedes engine, oh, that was strong. And it carried them for years. They could just coast. But 2022 and 2023 were metaphorical punches to the gut for Toto. These last two seasons have just made him look more petulant and angry. And that famous comment from Drive to Survive, "Everybody has a target on their back next year." Oh dear, including you? I get that Mercedes are frustrated, they're shocked, they're appalled at all of the results they've had, but they're still second place, for now, in the Constructors. It's not like they've fallen off a cliff like McLaren did in 2015. There's still some hope for them being able to turn this around, but as you find folks mentioned in the comments, and I've now since done my research properly, Mercedes just can't rely on their engine being super fast anymore, because the Honda engine, or the technically Red Bull powertrain engine, is just as good, if not better in certain circumstances. And it's really making it clear that Mercedes didn't really have to try it as hard on the aero front, that they didn't have to develop it all that much because their engine was just so good. The 2022 rules make downforce more of a priority than how much grunt you have in your power unit. As that's going on, Fred Vasseur is starting to show his calm path to power. Toto Wolff has been a team principal of Mercedes for a decade now, and that is some valuable experience and something not to be snubbed. It's something that he's done, credit where credit is due there. But Fred Vasseur, he's done 3 times that. He has been there and back. He knows how to run a team right from the beginning. Are you aware of the Art Grand Prix team that you see in the junior categories, including Formula 2? Well, that was one of his teams that he founded alongside Nicolas Tot, the son, incidentally, of Jean Tot, the former FIA president and team principal of Ferrari himself. Fred has seen some of the sport's modern talents get into F1, such as Lewis Hamilton, Nico Rosberg, and of course, as we all know, Charles Leclerc. With his Spark Racing technology company, he helped design the basic blueprint of Formula E in 2013. He was partly responsible for all of that and how it all worked. He's not as flashy as the likes of Toto or Zach Brown, but you feel like he's slowly getting his confidence, but sometimes he doesn't need to do any of that. He just lets the results speak for themselves. That experience at being at a backmarker team, trying to gain any point possible through adversity, through everything stacked against you, and then those moments of glory come around every once in a while, that's something that Toto's really not experienced. And now these two are on an even keel, both at front-running teams. Fred is showing that he is simply the better team principal. He knows how to handle a team that's not doing well, whereas Toto, he's now only just figuring it out. Toto, of course, does have experience in motorsport, but mainly as a driver rather than a team principal prior to coming in at Mercedes. Right now, Toto is struggling in how to handle himself as Mercedes are trying to get themselves back on an even keel and do better in 2024. But the Las Vegas weekend was a turning point for both of them. One rose to the occasion and one completely just this weekend was where Fred Vasseur truly excelled himself. Throughout all of this, where Mattia Binotto probably would have just shrugged his shoulders, said, oh well, and then moved on, Fred Vasseur was not going to take the situation lying down when it was clear that Ferrari, they were in a position to fight back. And yet at the same time, he didn't raise his voice or go off on a rant. He was cool, calm, collected, and yet you knew he was angry. There was a controlled fury in his voice at that press conference after the incident. The way he carried himself at that press conference, when you compare it to Toto, we'll talk about that in a moment, was astonishing. This was a powerful team leader, an assured one who wanted to fight the corner of Ferrari, that they were the ones that were being screwed over. Something that Enzo Ferrari probably would have been proud of, that this was not their fault. They don't deserve to have taken the financial hit for all of this. They couldn't overturn the penalties for replacing the components, but they can hopefully at least make it clear that things were unfair and that they will fight this, they will follow this up. When people were trying to move the question away from that and instead talking about, oh, how does Vegas feel to Ferrari? No, he wasn't willing to sugarcoat that or deviate from the subject matter. He wasn't done. He didn't feel like talking about the fripperies at that moment. He wanted to vent to the media that this was not fair. Carlos didn't do anything wrong. He could have been hurt, but he wasn't shouting. He just made it direct, clear. That is a team principle I can respect. I have a soft spot for Ferrari from the Schumacher days and the Alonso days from 2012, and I can also respect the Mercedes superiority era, but that press conference where Fred channeled his team's anger and refused to play nice with the media when told to look at the bigger picture? Yes, the Vegas livery was a nice touch to their time in America and their time with Mario Andretti in the 1970s, but that's not something that Fred wanted to talk about at that time. He either wanted to talk more about the injustice that his team was experiencing, or he didn't want to talk at all. He would have rather have left or let Toto say something. That's what he said. But he was not prepared to play the media circus game. Thanks to Vasseur's control of the situation, we're going to take this higher. And it seemingly is the case. He is going to have private discussions with Liberty Media and the Vegas organizers about compensation for the damage caused. Whether or not they will get compensation, that's up for that private discussion, but the fact that they're even going to these lengths is a clear sign of confidence and assuredness and a dogged determination to make sure that Ferrari aren't left out of pocket, because money is tight right now. Sure, Fred did say they do have enough spare parts and other accessories for the last race in Abu Dhabi and the Vegas weekend, but it's still going to make things really, really tight. According to Fred, they do not have any wiggle room when it comes to crashes or incidents that aren't mechanical failures. When you get things like that are beyond your control, they cannot accommodate for that because the cost cap is so tight. Yes, you can also complain that, oh, Ferrari have the money to spend. Well, they can't spend it. They have that allocated budget like everybody else. And you know what? I think they will succeed because there is a precedent for this. According to F1i, Haas reached a settlement with the Sepang organizers for compensation regarding a loose drain cover there in 2017. And hey, if Haas can get something done in their favor, so can Fred, right? So, that weekend, all of that, right said Fred. Oh, I've been waiting to say that. Okay, so what's Toto Wolff doing right now? Oh god, making indirect jokes about Michael Massey. Oh, sure, it was a blink and you'll miss it sort of thing. You may think I'm overreacting, but really? I didn't miss it. Look, we all have to move on, folks. Yes, it happened, and it should never have happened, and it should never happen again. But we just can't spend our lives repeating the same thing over and over again. Life is too short for that. I get it. Toto is nervous about the battle for second heating up between himself and Ferrari, as it's down to 4 points, and he is saying that he has no issue with the battle happening because he views it as being fair. But to bring that up? You know that that's going to send the social media world into a tailspin. I mean, it's done so right now with me talking about it in this video. Yes, you can say I'm part of the problem, but I don't want Toto to get away with this. This is really irresponsible. This is really something that needn't have been said. People will be thinking about it because it's Abu Dhabi. Of course they're going to be talking about it. But you, Toto, who is at the heart of the situation, this is just going to add more fuel to the fire where there needn't have been. The FIA and Formula One are already in hot water for many things at the moment, but this is something they do not need. And Toto is stirring the pot, whereas Fred, he's acting so much more dignified. And we all know what he said in Vegas, so I won't bore you with the details, but the point is that was an overly angry response to a perfectly reasonable question, and made it very clear that he does have a vested monetary interest that the other team principals don't have in ensuring that Vegas performs as intended, because the value of Formula One is directly linked to his value in Mercedes, because he is quite a big stakeholder in the Mercedes F1 team. He owns a third of that team, and it's currently valued his stake at about $1 billion or so. So Toto Wolff is technically a billionaire, but he may not be if Formula One's stock price and value goes down. So of course Toto Wolff's going to care about the situation. It's the case of, it's not what you said, but the way you said it. It was a perfectly reasonable question that could have done with a controlled angry response, like Fred did concerning science, but not like that. When you went into a tirade that felt akin to that scene in Drive to Survive from the current season, when he has a go at Christian Horner and talks about emails, absolute emails. It's just like, we felt like we were living in a drama at that time. If that's not in the next season of Drive to Survive, I will be shocked. Now let me make this clear. Fred Vasseur and Toto Wolff are friendly with one another. There's no beef between the two of them, and I don't think there will be unless things get absolutely heated when the two of them may be gunning for the top seat at the constructors table. Right now, the way that Ferrari are handling themselves and slowly transforming themselves into a more competent team, they deserve second place. Yes, Charles Leclerc has been beleaguered with bad luck throughout the entire season. Ferrari has still made mistakes. That is something that's not going to go away in a heartbeat. But when you look at certain things that are happening over the course of the season, they are making less mistakes. Their car is getting more reliable. It's going to be a slow process. And many pundits, including Ralf Schumacher, are begging Ferrari for patience in this matter. That Fred Vasseur cannot turn the situation around in a single season, because there are a lot of traditions and things that Ferrari do that take a long time to evolve. When Jean Todt came in and that dream team came in, they didn't start seeing results until about 2 or 3 seasons in. Michael Schumacher did not win a title until 2000, his 5th season with the Scuderia. Yes, he was competitive, but he just couldn't put it all together. It took time, which is something that Ferrari should give Fred, Charles and Carlos and the team that is slowly being built at the Scuderia. Ferrari haven't been willing to give that as of late because they've been going through team principles like crazy. But with Fred, I feel like this is something really to stick to, because he knows how to run a team that is doing quite well and a team that's not doing so well. That's quite stuck at the back. Whereas Toto right now, yes, I'm not going to take away his achievements, they were earned and deserved. But Mercedes right now are showing their weaknesses, that the era of dominance they had were mostly carried by the internal combustion engine, and that the aero is something they really need to develop on and factor in as more of a priority going into 2024. They will be able to recover from this because the Red Bull concept does work and everybody's going that way. So Mercedes need to swallow their pride, go that way, try and figure out some innovations of their own, and then evolve and adapt. Maybe in 2025, they might come up with a solution with those little tweaks towards getting rid of outwash that might propel them up the grid. Mercedes can get through this, but right now, it's looking so shaky. So shaky. But just because Mercedes are in the middle of a crisis themselves, doesn't mean Ferrari aren't having some themselves, including the little catastrophe that is Charles Leclerc, but they're going to have to do some convincing to keep him for next year. You can watch this video next as to the internal struggles that Ferrari are facing with their golden boy.